What's up YouTube? Crispy Charizard here, and today I will be pretty late though, very late, discussing the direct that is going to be live on YouTube tomorrow in my time zone, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yes, again, it is very late to be discussing this, but to be honest, I only found out about it like this morning, and I was busy up until now. So whoever's gonna be watching this video will probably be watching it maybe after the direct is already out, but the point of this is maybe some predictions. And it doesn't matter if these predictions will be seen late. The date on this video, once it's uploaded, will prove if it's, when it was made. And it was made the night before the direct, which comes out tomorrow. And that is just in case my predictions are correct. Mostly my discussions won't be predictions, it'll just be discussing what we already know for sure, but I still want to get some predictions out there just so I can say that I got some things right, if I will. But chances are I won't. Maybe everything I predict will be wrong. But if you don't know, the Pokemon Direct is something that they recently, and by recent I mean generation-wise, not date-wise, is something they used to have a live broadcast for extremely important announcements. So it's very, very important. I can tell because I remember the last Pokemon Direct was the announcement for Sun and Moon. And that was very special for Pokemon fans everywhere. And, well, I wasn't there for the announcements of every single Pokemon game, but I was there for the more recent ones. These are the main games so far. We have Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Ruby, Sapphire, Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Emerald, Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black, White, Black 2, White 2, X, Y, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, Sun, and Moon. And there's a lot of things that could be discussed tomorrow. Announced. And I like to discuss the options. The pattern for Pokemon games have been less than exact throughout the years, but by now there's a pattern, of course. It's they don't always do the same thing though, which is very confusing. In Generation 1, they made 2 games, Red and Blue, and then they made a third game a little later, which was Pokemon Yellow. That third game was almost identical to Red and Blue, but it had a few extra things. It was basically like a slightly better version, but the differences were very few. In Generation 2, they did almost the same thing. They made Gold and Silver, then a little later they made Crystal, which was basically a slightly better version of Gold and Silver. In Generation 3, they made Ruby and Sapphire, but for the first time they made a remake, Fire Red and Leaf Green, which were remakes of the original Red and Blue. Or rather, Red and Green, even though, if you didn't know, the Generation 1 and 3 things is a long story. Basically, Japan got Red and Green originally, but America got Red and Blue. But the remakes were still Fire Red and Leaf Green. And then after that, they made Emerald, which was a slightly better version of Ruby and Sapphire. Or rather, and they're starting to, a new trend here, is basically like if Ruby and Sapphire were combined into one game, where you didn't have to choose sides when it came to the storyline, Emerald would be that, of course, with a new legendary to focus on. Generation 4 continued this trend with Diamond and Pearl, and then a little later Platinum. Now Platinum is one of my all-time favorite games, to be honest, at least of that time period. And by the differences that I have noticed, Platinum is similar in pattern to what Emerald did. Platinum was essentially a advanced form of Diamond and Pearl. It was like it took what Diamond and Pearl did and made it a little better, while still being almost identical in setting. Then after that they made remakes of Gold and Silver, Heart Gold, Soul Silver. Then Generation 5 came along and they made Black and White. And of course, I don't remember what I was thinking back then because it was so long ago. People predicted a third game, just like Yellow, Crystal, Emerald, and Platinum, or at least the remakes. But Generation 5 did not make a third game like Yellow, Crystal, Emerald, or Platinum. And they did not make a remake like Fire Red, Leaf Green, Heart Gold, or Soul Silver. What they did was make a sequel, Black 2 and White 2. Which makes Generation 5 a very unique generation. It's probably the most unique of all the generations in this trend, because they did not make a third game or a remake pair. They just made Black and White, and then they made Black 2 and White 2, which is basically a direct sequel for the story of Black and White set 2 years later, in the same region with new characters. What they did was very interesting, and I'll come back to that. Then in Generation 6, they made X and Y. People after that predicted, just like they predicted for Generation 5, that the third game would be Pokemon Gray. I forgot to mention. So after Black and White, people thought there would be a Pokemon Gray, because Gray seems like a nice name for the third game after the pair of Black and White. Of course, Gray never came out. They instead made the sequels Black 2, White 2. Again, in Generation 6, after X and Y, many people, although not everyone, since they started to get suspicious of the obvious answer, predicted Pokemon Z. Now, this I remember. When Pokemon Z was spreading among the internet, I was like, I don't think so. They never made Pokemon Gray, and there's no evidence of Pokemon Z. It was just rumors. I mean, I don't even remember there being any good leaks about it. So, this is just to point out that being very suspicious of many things is always wise. You shouldn't believe everything you hear. There was never a Pokemon Gray, and, of course, there was never a Pokemon Z. X and Y remain a solitary pair. What did come afterwards in Generation 6 was another remake. And, of course, like they made a remake of the first generation and the second generation, the next remake is the third generation. So Ruby and Sapphire got remade into Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Then Generation 7 came along with Sun and Moon. There was lots of leaks, there was lots of discussions, there was lots of rumors, and there was lots of announcements. What will be announced tomorrow at 10 a.m. in my time zone? Sun and Moon just came out, if I'm not mistaken, 7 months ago, back in November, more or less. Here are the options. One option is a third game, equivalent to, say, Yellow, Emerald, Platinum, Crystal. And this game has 3 possible names on the internet, because I've looked at the rumors and there's 3 names. The most popular name is Pokemon Stars. And if this game were to be real, and regardless of it'll be announced tomorrow or not, if it's real, Stars is either its real name or its code name, because when they produce games they use code names to prevent leaks. Yes, the first possible name to be rumored about the new game, the third game after Sun and Moon, is Stars. As you can tell, Sun, Moon, and Stars. It is a very good trio. Take your attention back to how there was never Black, White, Gray. There was never a Gray. Or X, Y, Z. There was never a Z. So, the fact that there was no Gray or Z is telling me that Stars is not confirmed just yet. If Stars is announced tomorrow, I'll be very happy. And since this is the most popular theory out there, I will discuss what it means in a few moments. The second name that I've heard people discuss as being the name for this third game, other than Stars, could be Eclipse. Because when you join the Sun and Moon, you get an Eclipse. So Sun, Moon, and Eclipse. It's not a bad name, although Stars is a little better. And the third name, which might be the least common, is Prism. Now, Prism might make you think of Pokemon Rainbow, the idea of a Pokemon game that contains all the regions made so far all in one game and you can travel between them, which I don't think they're ever making that. But Prism is referring to the third legendary Pokemon, which was not showcased much in Sun and Moon. Now let me give you examples of this up until this point. Suicune, the cover of Crystal, was discussed more in Crystal than it was in Gold and Silver. And in the remakes Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Suicune was basically mentioned more as it was in Crystal. The third legendary Pokemon of Ruby and Sapphire, Rayquaza, is the cover of Emerald. The third legendary Pokemon of Diamond and Pearl was the cover of Platinum, and it got a new form, and it was basically more important than Dialga and Palkia were. Then there's the Generation 5 anomaly. After Reshiram and Zekrom, the third in their trio was, of course, Kyurem. But instead of making Pokemon Gray, they made Black 2 and White 2. And the cover of Black 2 and White 2 are the two new forms of Kyurem. So, that might be what they're going to be doing with Pokemon Stars / Prism / Eclipse, with the cover Pokemon being the third, or at least a new Pokemon, in the trio of Solgaleo and Lunala, and that Pokemon is Necrozma. Necrozma here is the ideal Pokemon to be the cover of any third game that will be potentially released after Sun and Moon. It is basically like Suicune, or better yet like Rayquaza, Giratina, and maybe in some ways like Kyurem. Now Kyurem did not get a third game, it got 2 sequels. And Zygarde never even got Pokemon Z. Sure, Zygarde was featured a lot more in Sun and Moon, but that wasn't... Sun and Moon didn't even come out later in Generation 6. They made Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, which did not even mention Zygarde fully. They basically expanded Hoopa's story and gave him a new form that was not an X and Y. And Zygarde, who was pretty boring in X and Y, was expected to be given Pokemon Z. But it never was. It was given Sun and Moon, where Zygarde got many new forms and was featured heavily as an interesting Pokemon. It is not confirmed, but it is possible for Necrozma to be given the next Pokemon game. Whether it be called Stars, Eclipse, or Prism. Prism referring to Necrozma directly because it is the Prism Pokemon who uses Prismatic Laser as its signature move. One leaker has even claimed that it came from outer space, and that is why it'll be called Pokemon Stars. Although this leaker, of course, could be a fake, a hoax. You never know. I don't believe everything I hear automatically. I'd like to believe it, but it's basically just the obvious answer, and some things are too obvious and not confirmed. Back to the list. The first option of what will be revealed tomorrow is a third game to come after Sun and Moon. Now, they haven't made an actual third game since Platinum. Think about that. Platinum, back in Generation 4, was the last third game. The last trio. Because after Platinum, they made Heart Gold Soul Silver. They made Generation 5, which did not contain any trios. It just had the sequels. Then Generation 6 had X and Y and Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. Which means there haven't been any trios since then. Which means this could be something that they chose never to do again. Maybe they decided only to make pairs from now on. It's completely possible that, Pokemon and Nintendo and Game Freak, whoever makes the decisions, saw that it is better just to make pairs and to stop making trios. Which is why we haven't seen a third game since Pokemon Platinum. Although, it's completely possible that they were just biding their time, changing their plans, and maybe a third game will come out tomorrow. Be announced tomorrow. It might still be a long time before anything that's announced tomorrow will come out. And remember, it's completely possible that tomorrow will not even be announcing a new game. I'm only considering the options of them actually announcing a game because that is what everyone wants. That's what I want. It is the best possible outcome of tomorrow, with Star / Eclipse / Prism being one option. What is the second option? The second option would be another remake. Of course, we've only had 3 remakes so far. The Violet Leaf Green remakes, the Heart Gold Soul Silver remakes, and the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire remakes. So like I was saying, the second option is that if they're not making Pokemon Stars, they are making the Diamond Pearl remakes, since it's logically the next remake to be made, Gen 4. Of course, that means that it'll be remakes of Diamond and Pearl. They'll receive new, interesting new names. I don't know exactly. Maybe like a Temporal Diamond, Spatial Pearl, something like that. And, like usual, they will incorporate Platinum heavily into these new remakes. So it'll be basically, these remakes will be a fusion of the original Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum games with more modern Pokemon from every generation since the original Gen 4. New Mega Pokemon, maybe new Z-moves, slightly better storyline. If you were to ask me what's more likely, I would say that a sequel like Stars would be more likely because I feel it a bit too early, a tad bit too early for announcing Gen 4 remakes. Sure, I am almost certain that Diamond and Pearl will get remakes eventually, but I'm not entirely convinced that that's what will be announced tomorrow. Now, of course, anything that comes after a potential sequel or a potential Gen 4 remake will be Generation 8. We will disregard this option because Generation 8 is almost certainly not being announced tomorrow. It is way too early. Generation 8 is far off, and I will be theorizing what Generation 8 will hold sometime in the future. But today we will be discussing Generation 7's second half. Now let me return to Pokemon Stars, as what I will be calling the theorized new game from now on. It could be a third game, which is basically a repeat of Sun and Moon, but a little better, but I don't think anyone wants that. Almost no one wants to play Sun and Moon again, even if it is a little different. Even if it is as good as Crystal, Emerald, Platinum, like those. What people would really, really prefer, or maybe not, I don't know what everyone wants, but what I would like is a sequel like Black 2 and White 2. Now, many people hate Generation 5, and many people don't like the idea of the sequels like Black 2 and White 2. But this will not be exactly like Black 2 and White 2. It'll be like part ways like sequels like Black 2 and White 2, and part ways like a trio game, a third game, like Crystal, Yellow, Emerald, and Platinum. Necrosha might essentially be like Giratina, who will be getting its own game, and will get new forms. New forms just like Zygarde and Giratina and Kyurem got. Basically, the most likely announcement tomorrow is for a new game that will be a trio, a third game as part of a trio, Sun, Moon, and Stars, but it'll be a sequel like Black 2 and White 2, and not a repeat like Crystal, Emerald, and Platinum. It'll have a new story, and it'll take place a few years later, and the character will probably be in Alolan, or maybe move there, which seems to be a common theme in many games with the character moving to a region, but that's not necessary. The previous protagonist from Sun and Moon, who we could call, let's say, Elio and Celine, as their names could be in English for the Sun and the Moon characters. Let's say Sun is the champion. You would have to fight him at the end of the game, almost like Gold battling Red in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but with lots of implementation of what Black 2 and White 2 did as a sequel. Another thing that is very important is that this game will be potentially released either only on the Nintendo 3DS, the handheld console, or on the Nintendo Switch, or on both. Now, personally, I don't want it to be released on the Nintendo Switch by itself because I don't have a Nintendo Switch, nor do I plan on buying one. I have no problem with my handheld Nintendo 3DS, and I'd like to keep it that way. So, the best thing to make everyone happy would be to release this game on both the Switch and the handheld. I think that this option would satisfy the most people, as well as bring a lot of profit for the companies, which would of course lead to better games in the future. And finally, the thing that I wanted to get to the most, the empty lot theory. Around the Alola region, as seen in Sun and Moon, there are a few empty lots scattered around, and many people have noticed this and thought that this is either a mistake in a space allotment, some people have automatically claimed that this is simply a hint that a new game is coming out, as I believe, and some people say that it is simply a metaphor, like a representation that the Alola region is a developing region who has just established their Pokemon League for the first time, have a full-time champion, the main character, be assigned for the first time, and those empty lots, as everyone has guessed, represents future locations of gyms, who will be taken over by gym leaders, who will serve as the league's aid to gyms in the future. These lots, whether they represent gym locations or not, would make more sense representing or hinting at a new game than they are as simply symbolizing that the region is changing. Because I checked, and there are exactly 8 lots. On Melemele Island in Hau'oli City, Hiahia City on Akala Island, in front of the Malasada shop, next to the fountain, in front of the Battle Royale Dome. Konikoni City, 5th empty lot, is in Mali City on Ula Ula Island. Tapu Village, on an island in the middle of Route 15. On Pony Island, in the Seafolk Village. The majority of these empty lots are filled with construction equipment and girders, and it looks like they are being planned to be prepared into some sort of construction spot, although no work has been confirmed as to have been started, except for the case of the Machamp using bulldoze on the first location. But I am very, very sure, or at least hoping, that tomorrow they will announce a third game that represents a sequel to Sun and Moon, and we'll have 8 gyms and no more trials in the Alola region. Which would be nice, because gyms are better than the trials. Many people have enjoyed the trials, so have I, but good old classic gyms cannot be replaced, and there will be 8 of them. I'm excited about the Direct tomorrow. I will be making a reaction video possibly tomorrow morning, and you will see if I was right or not. Hopefully I wasn't too far off. I'll see you tomorrow.